Good evening, everyone. So, tonight we did actually a study night for strategic therapy where we ran through kind of like the entire model of strategic therapy by using Lucas Valini's book. Right here is the book that I used, and I am going to provide the link to it. So I used that book, and then I also used this book, Eli Karam's book, in order to make this presentation tonight. So we are going to take a deep dive into strategic therapy, which you're going to most likely have to see and, be able to read and learn and understand it once you see it on the exam. So the first things first is going to be your domain one, which is the practice of systemic therapy. Your practice of systemic therapy is how you are going to be viewing this family system, this couple, this client, whoever it may be, and how you are going to work with them from a systems perspective. Strategic therapy draws from what? General systems theory, right? As well as your structural family therapy, as well as Bowen therapy. Those are all of your systemic therapy models. Jay Haley talked about symptoms that stem from a faulty organization in the system. Interactions that are continuing that this family is going to be stuck in. Patterns, disabling sequences that this family, this couple, whatever the case may be, is continuing to be stuck in, going through these same solutions that are not working. On this slide, you see some key terms that you are most likely going to see on the exam or in some of your mock questions. Now, there are other key terms that are like least likely that you may see, or they possibly could pop up and you need to know what they mean. Now, your directives are simply tasks that are given outside of therapy. Your directive might be to tell this family to go home and argue for 25 minutes. You have now just directed them to engage in a paradoxical intervention. A paradoxical intervention is interventions that are given for them not to change, or changes that are in a way to contradict as to why they are coming to therapy in the first place. Ordeal therapy, you're going to be thinking about what's less desirable first so that you can get to do what is more desirable for you. Have no fear. I have some examples that we are going to run through so that you're not kind of like scrambling to try to understand what they mean as I talk. Unbalancing, as you can see, this is also a structural family therapy term. Unbalancing is just simply taking the side of the client that everyone seems to think is the identified patient, the problem, or why they are even in therapy in the first place. A reframe is simply making the interaction more positive. I know that there's this little negative way that you're thinking about it, but let's reframe it and let's look at it in a more positive light. Prescribing a symptom is a paradoxical intervention. It is given to the client in order for them to admit that they can just like give it up or admit that it's voluntary. It forces the client to give up the symptom. I will do an example, so don't worry. Restraining, suggesting the family not to change right now. Or slow down, like you're moving a little bit too fast. Let's maybe take a look at this. We don't want you moving too fast, right? Pretend technique, exactly what it is. Pretending to engage in the symptomatic behaviors. If you have to pretend to engage in it, is it even real in the first place? Now, we're going to take a deep dive into some of the interventions and some of the examples that I have. I found a way to, I stuck them in ChatGPT just to see what they would come up with. I gave the examples myself, but I wanted to see how they would kind of like phrase some of them. So unbalancing, just like I said, this is also a technique that is used in structural family therapy. Strategic therapy draws from structural family therapy, right? And we'll learn some of that when we get to the phases. But your unbalancing is simply this therapist is going to take the side of the person who everyone's picking on, thinking they're the reason why we're in therapy. You're the problem. We're here because of you. So now that therapist is going to take the side to kind of like balance the system back. And if you take a look at the example, we got a child that is refusing to follow the household rules. Now, the father is the disciplinarian one. The father is probably saying, hey, you need to be following these rules, but the mom is more passive, and probably the mother and the father are not on the same page with each other. So the therapist is going to side with the mother in order to get her on the exact same page as that father. So the therapist is going to tell the mom and let the mom know, you need to start enforcing some of these rules that the father, your husband, is also enforcing, so that you guys have balance in the system. Because right about now, we got the teen and the mom is here and the father is down below. The mother and the father need to be here and the teenager needs to be down there. That's how it goes. Ordeal therapy, less desirable to more desirable, right? So we have a teenage client or an adult. I just spend so much of my time playing video games and I can't get myself to exercise. You may want to exercise, right? You want to do that, right? But playing that video game is just a tad bit more desirable to you. So let's do the less desirable first, and then you can do the more desirable. Your less desirable is going to be to do what? Go home and exercise for 15 minutes, and then you can play that video game as long as you want to. But think about it this way, because I can exercise. I can do it without having to know that once I do it, I can do this more desirable thing. I can just go home and just exercise. I don't need to be even thinking about playing a video game when I know when I get home, I'm just going to exercise. That's what ordeal therapy is. Now, a reframe, not the same as a positive connotation. I'm not going to confuse anybody. We'll talk about positive connotation when we get to the study night where we do Milan. So your reframe is simply that negative way of looking at something and just giving it an alternative way to look at it. A wife says, my husband is so jealous. He's constantly checking my phone and asks where I'm going. He's controlling. He's exhausted. To her, it's negative and she doesn't like it. But if a therapist was to reframe it, we can say like, it sounds like some of his questions meaning that he just wants to feel secure or he values you. That's why he's doing all of these things, because he's afraid of losing you. Same situation is equally plausible with how we're looking at it. We're just looking at it in an alternate way. That's what a reframe is. Prescribing a symptom. This is your paradoxical intervention. It's one of your classic paradoxical intervention, right? A couple's coming to therapy. They're saying that they're arguing every evening over small disagreements. Now, this couple is probably coming to therapy because they want to stop the arguing. But prescribing a symptom is going to tell you to do it. But this time, we're going to put a time on it. Go home and do it for 2 minutes, but make it playful. If you have to go home and set a timer for 2 minutes and make it playful, do you really need to be arguing in the first place? Or is it voluntary and can you just give it up? It's better to give up the symptom that you have than to maintain it. Pretend technique. The same as how it sounds. You're just going to be pretending. A couple comes to therapy because they're constantly fighting with each other. Okay, go home and pretend to argue intentionally for 5 minutes. Does this issue really exist? If I have to pretend, is it real in the first place? That's your pretend technique. Your restraining technique. Now, I want to stop snacking completely, but Carrie knows that she likes Flamin' Hots, and I also like Doritos too, right? But I know, like, I need to stop snacking on them all the time. I can't be eating them all the time, right? But I want to stop snacking completely. However, every time I try to stop eating it altogether, I'm failing at it, because every time I turn around, when I go into the grocery store, I'm looking at those Flamin' Hot Cheetos or my favorite Flamin' Hot Funyuns, and I just have to buy them. I'm going to buy them all the time I see them because I love them so much. But the therapist is going to tell you, well, maybe you're not just ready to quit eating the snacks altogether. Let's reduce it, right? Now, I'm not telling you to change. We're just going to reduce what you are doing. Or there's other examples where they talk about how you're moving too fast, slow down. It's also another way to look at a restraining technique. Slow down, Carrie. You don't have to stop eating the Flamin' Flamin' Hot Funyuns, all in all, just kind of like reduce how many of the Flamin' Hot Funyuns or the Cheetos that you're eating in a week. That's a restraining technique. All right, domain 2, assessing, hypothesizing, and diagnosing. Your assessing is going to be how you're looking at this family in like the first stages of therapy. How am I going to assess them? I need to get to know them. I need to look at these things. I need to observe these different ways, right? Hypothesizing. What do I think is going on with this family and how can I help them? There really isn't any diagnosis for strategic therapy, so we don't really need to weigh heavily on that. So this is your classic phase of therapy for strategic therapy. Your first session has 4 stages: social, problem, interaction, and goals. Your social stage, you're going to be joining, connecting, getting to know the family. Your problem stage, getting to know each client's perspective on the problem. But Jay Heyyyyyy and Silverdar Minushkin both were really big on the man. So they're going to ask the father what's going on first. If you take a look, your interaction stage, some of those words and terms mimic structural family therapy because strategic therapy draws from structural family therapy. In your interaction stage, you're going to be observing the interactions, but you're not trying to interpret anything. You're looking for hierarchies, triangles, alliances, coalitions, because even in strategic therapy, Jay Heyyyyyy was really big on that parental subsystem. That executive subsystem is important, which is why even in, who's involved in therapy, the parents had to be there. Your middle stage of therapy is simply your interventions: prescribing the symptoms, ordeal therapy, restraining technique, unbalancing, reframing. Those are all what you're doing in the middle stage of strategic therapy. Going into the late stage of strategic therapy, you're still looking at some of those interventions, trying to see, is the problem, is the symptom resolved? Is the problem, better able to maintain it right about now? Are we ready for termination? For strategic therapy, you have a first session with 4 stages: social, interaction, problem, and the goal setting stage. Your middle stage is interventions, and your late stage is kind of you still sliding out of those interventions and into whether or not if you've helped this family achieve symptom relief. That is your classic strategic family therapy phases of therapy. You're designing and conducting treatment. This also has to do with your phases of therapy as well. You need to know who's involved in therapy, how long therapy is going to be, and what are the goals of therapy. The parents, it's so important. Both parents have to be in therapy for strategic therapy, or the people who are directly related to the problem. Strategic therapy is very brief. Once the problem has been resolved, termination time. Your goals of therapy: altering behavior interactions in order to help this family, this couple, whoever it is, achieve symptom relief. But you are still focusing on what? The parental hierarchy. It's very big on the parental hierarchy because it draws from structural family therapy. This sums up your strategic therapy. If you missed the study meet tonight, no worries. I provided this presentation inside of the Facebook group, so you're fine. But if you missed it and you wanted to better hear me work through it, you have now just received the first MFT study night of doing our very first theory together. And I'm so glad that it had to be strategic therapy. Okay, so that comes to the end of our study night for strategic therapy. If you are not in my Facebook group and you only follow me on YouTube and TikTok, I want you to join my Facebook group so that you are able to engage in some of these questions that we're going to be doing for the rest of the week. I also will upload my GroupMe link so that you can also be a part of that as well. So this week, we are all things strategic therapy, answering practice of systemic therapy questions when it comes to the general systems perspective in regards to strategic therapy. We are going to be answering and defining intervention questions, the phases of therapy questions for strategic therapy, goal formulating questions for strategic therapy, key term questions and synonyms for strategic therapy. Next week on October 19th, we will be doing a mock exam on strategic therapy only. We will be doing that on Kahoot. I will also provide the link to that. Alrighty, if anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. Leave me a comment on YouTube. Send me a message on Facebook. I will be more than welcome to get back to you. Again, we are all things strategic therapy this week. We are taking it back to the drawing board to find our weekly focus to have a better understanding of these theories so that we can have clarity and understanding when it comes to sitting for these exams that are coming up for everyone. Even if you're taking it next Saturday or 2-3 weeks from now, it's okay. You can still take a deep dive into it so that you have a better way of looking at these the questions and even navigating your way through those answer responses. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Thanks for listening.